Hey guys, welcome to Juicy Tea, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. Today is Bridezilla Saturday, with the craziest wedding stories from across Reddit. Cringe wedding speeches. Dad insinuates that the groom is ugly, and the uncle insinuates that the bride is a gold digger. Posted by Dark Angel. Yeah, my wedding. When my husband and I started dating, he was a big, tall man, and I was a petite and slim woman. We clicked because of our shared interests and values, and we were engaged within a year, with the engagement lasting 2 years before the big day. I was, and still very much am, in love with my husband, despite the comments from friends and even my own family about my husband's looks. I didn't care. I'm a self-described sapiosexual. My husband's intelligence and humour just swept me off my feet. For context, when hubby and I met, I was a broke college student and he managed his family business. He always said he and his family were comfortable, but as someone who literally lived with a family in a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, rundown bungalow, hubby and his family were more than comfortable. But honestly, I had no idea how well off they were until the wedding planning time. I'd been working on freelance stuff while in college and managed to get some good money to start paying vendors after I graduated. Hubby and I also started planning to buy a house and talked about loans and stuff. My father-in-law-to-be got wind of it and basically sat us down and said that he would pay for the wedding and gave us the blueprint to what would be our house. I was stunned and tried to decline, but he was so insistent that hubby and I could only nod. Now, my dad, he starts to throw in some demands of where the wedding should take place. He wants it to be in our hometown, since traditionally, where I'm from, the wedding has to be held in the bride's birthplace. My father-in-law argued that since he's paying, it has to be convenient for him and his family. He even offered to pay for my entire family to fly to the big city to hold the wedding there. It got to the point where hubby and I almost eloped out of frustration. Anyway, it was resolved when my father-in-law paid to fly my parents to the city and he showed them the house he'd built for hubby and me. It was a very nice 2-story townhouse. That shut my father up and they compromised on having the wedding in the city near my hometown, which was closest to the airport. I don't know if you can tell, but I don't have a close relationship with my father. But I also don't have a close relationship with his side of the family and didn't even want to invite them because of all the backstabbing and bad-mouthing they did to my family. For context, we were well off before, but fell into extremely hard times. My father's family didn't lift a finger to help, and instead disrespected, laughed at, and shunned us. It was my mother's side who helped us get back on our feet. This will be important later. Fast forward to the wedding. The ceremony was beautiful, and the day was a dream. It was all going so well until the wedding speeches took place. I don't know how it is in other weddings, but for mine, a lot of family members get to speak. Why do I get the feeling that this girl has zero say in her own wedding? Where it was, who made speeches? She didn't even want to invite her dad's side. Yet somehow, they're not only invited, but have a say in where it's held and get to make speeches. There were several heartfelt and wonderful speeches, but unfortunately, what stuck out like a sore thumb were the speeches of my father and my uncle. My father basically started his speech by pointing out that he thought hubby and I were mismatched. Exact words, mismatched. I wasn't sure what he meant until he said, "Look how stunning my daughter is," while her husband, he trailed off and just gestured at my husband. There were nervous chuckles all around, and I just want the earth to swallow me whole. He might have caught on to how awkward it was because he did end the speech beautifully, but the damage was done. I couldn't even look at the table where my in-laws were sitting. Years later, it's still the topic of conversation with my in-laws. I honestly thought that was the worst of it, until the MC had my uncle-in-law speak. Oh my god, I blame the MC, seriously. Now, this uncle-in-law I once thought was pretty cool because it was funny and all that. I did hear that he also badmouthed my family before, but I was kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt. Another thing, his stepdaughter, my cousin, whom I honestly did not want to invite but did so at the behest of my other relatives, had disrespected my parents on more than one occasion because we were poor, and I do not have a good relationship with her. Anyway, this uncle, he starts off by saying the first time he met my husband, he knew immediately that he was made of money, and he basically spent almost the entirety of his speech talking about how rich my husband is, practically insinuating that I married him because he was rich. It was so awkward and embarrassing, and to this day, I still cannot watch the entirety of my wedding video because it includes that speech. Anyway, that was 10 years ago. Hubby and I are still married and have a toddler and are still very much in love. My dad and my hubby have a civil relationship, but I've tried to avoid my uncle like the plague. I think our only interaction in the past 7 years was when we brought our baby home, and he said I should lose some weight. Yeah, he's an a-hole. Am I the a-hole for not having my friend in or at my wedding? I was her maid of honor. Posted by Okay Babe. Buckle up, lots of backstory here. So, I, 24 female, was one of 2 maids of honor in my friend, let's call her Jess, 22 female's wedding. Over the last few years, our relationship has been rocky. A few years back, before I got with my now fiancé, I had a thing with a guy, we'll call him John, in our mutual friend group. It was on again, off again, for about 6 years, and it always ended the same way. John was talking to other girls, and I was done waiting around. The last time, I put my foot down, and I told him I need to move on. He acted okay with it, until he found out I was dating my now fiancé. Over the course of the last few years, he's created rumors about me, twisted my words, and turned most people in the group against me. There's more to that, but I'll get to the point. Essentially, Jess's now husband is best friends with John, and she was in the middle in some ways, but always seemed to stick by me, support me, and reassure my feelings about it all. Fast forward to this year, 2023. I've been out of that friend group for at least 2 years completely, little to no contact with anyone, but somehow, drama is still occurring, and it still involves me. Being that Jess is my friend, and really my only connection with the group, I went to her to ask where all this drama was coming from. She and her now husband told me the only reason John would do these things would be if he was still upset that you've moved on with someone else. I later found out that someone was telling the group that I was telling people those things. I just said okay and we moved on. Another factor in all of this is that John now has a fiancé, whom Jess absolutely hated. In any gatherings with that group, we've always kept things cordial, saying hello, how are you, and usually just moved on to chat with other people. One day, Jess went to dinner with John's fiancé to make up and clear the air, as there was some tension between them, and ever since then, Jess has been acting strange. Going into this dinner, she said she was dreading it, and that she was going to tell me all about it, but I didn't hear from her for almost 2 weeks after their dinner. We normally talk at least once a week on the phone. So I reached out to her to see if everything went okay. To which she replied, we decided to keep what we discussed between us to avoid more drama, and we aren't friends, but we'll be friendly going forward. I thought this was weird, but I just told myself they were being mature about it and moving on. In the summer, I attended a baby shower for a family friend that Jess and John's fiancé were invited to also. I noticed that they showed up together, and to my surprise, Jess was like glued to John's fiancé's side, and barely said more than hi to me, her maid of honor and so-called best friend. When I went up to say hi to Jess and John's fiancé glanced at me in the corner of her eye, flipped her hair in my face, and turned around to ignore me. This was out of the blue. As I mentioned above, we'd always been cordial and said hello when we saw each other. Later that evening, after the baby shower, I sent a nice text to John's fiancé, saying something like, I could have been mistaken, but it seemed like you ignored me tonight, and I know that we'll be seeing a lot of each other going forward with the wedding and mutual events, so I'd love to chat and clear the air, be cordial, etc., so as to not make it awkward. I got a response the following day saying that she'd call me. To wrap up that call in a sentence, she basically told me to F off and that she owes me nothing, and she chooses to believe what she's heard about me from the people that she's put her trust in and doesn't need to waste her time on someone like me. I was truly confused and speechless. After that call, my first call was to Jess to pick her brains about anything that might have come up or been misconstrued in the conversation at dinner that she was being so elusive about. She played dumb and then immediately got defensive, saying things like, "You don't think I said anything to her, do you? And nothing really came up about you." For the next few months leading up to the wedding, she was practically radio silent. I checked in with her to make sure everything was good and that she didn't need anything before the wedding, as I'd stuffed the invitations and put together party favors. She hardly said a word. I sent her money to treat herself the week of the wedding, and she said absolutely nothing. I got engaged in August, and when I FaceTimed her, she seemed emotionless. When I saw her in person, she said absolutely nothing about the engagement. No hug, no congrats, no, let me see the ring. All the things that I did for her when she got engaged, and that my other friends did for me. Not to mention, I planned and paid for all of the bachelorette party, despite the mums attending and there being another maid of honor. Aside from a brief thank you text the morning after the wedding, it's been over a month and I've not heard from her. I'm getting married next year, and I don't think she's even going to be invited to my wedding because I've come to the conclusion that she could be the only person who is stirring the pot in my absence. But I struggle because I'll never truly know. Am I the a-hole? This is so confusing. What the hell's going on here? It was pretty sus how defensive she got when OP called her. Perhaps Jess really is the one stirring the pot, but down in the comments, Sad Satisfaction has another explanation. John is her husband's BFF. Her husband chose to keep the peace with John. At the lunch between Jess and John's fiancé, she was told, "We won't be around you and hubby if OP is there." John's fiancé, "Poor John is so hurt over her behaviour." Bottom line, she chose to make her husband happy by cutting you out. I reckon John told the whole friend group that they were still dating and that OP cheated on him, and maybe even told his fiancé that she keeps flirting with him and trying to hook up again. Otherwise, why would the fiancé be so mad and insist that Jess cut her out? John's probably just butthurt over her dumping him and moving on when she was his plan B. Remember, I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.